Hi, everybody. I'm Rick DiClemente. Welcome to Astrology Unplugged, another evening where we'll talk about the planets and what they're doing to us and what they appear to be doing and what they're not doing. All things, things. And I'm muting everybody. Okay. Tonight, I thought I become inundated by talking to people I knew was coming. I knew it was coming. And I'm getting all these statements from people. I want it to go back to normal. Well, good luck, man. Because there never was a normal, and we certainly aren't going back there. And I don't know what you think it was. So tonight's analysis is by me, mainly about how did we get here? And she's already hard at work for next week. Liza's going to prepare the lecture for you for how do we get out of it? Two big mouthfuls. So when you think of all these issues, they're very, very difficult. And I'm going to try to pinpoint specific time periods that were a great big deal in this country and nobody did anything about it. And that's why we're here. So I'm going to get into it. We're going to jump around a little bit into different topics. Oh yeah, I was reading the plaque. I was reading the plaque on the side of the Statue of Liberty. It talked about send us your weak and you're homeless and you're poor and you're infirmed and we'll leave the light on for you and send us to us and everything will be hunky dory. There's your problem. When you're going through a Pluto time, and Pluto never hits you by itself, but we're certainly going through a Pluto time with Pluto having returned. It's still back there wiggling back and forth. So it's amazing Pluto time. When you go through a Pluto time period, everything tests you upon the validity of your mission statement. Did you mean it? Or were you just talking? Did it sound good at the bar while you're drinking a few? Oh, we send those Chinese all kind of money. What are they bitching about? You know what I'm saying? Or do you mean it? And I think the two really big turning points in modern history have been when when Trump got elected was the same time Harris was discovered. No coincidence. And the second one was when we found out that, yeah, bring us your tired and your poor, and we'll put them in cages. And we'll separate them from their parents so they can't even find them later. That was the two big turning points. And worse of that, who cares? I mean, how many people really care about this issue? I know I do. I know we do. We got a good group and they're making progress in the area. But there are a couple of things we want to go back to now. We want to go back to 2005 and 2006 because somehow Mr. Brown, the astronomer out west, he discovered Eris twice. He discovered her once, and in 2006, he discovered again. I'm not sure why. He discovered her in what's called the Kuiper Belt, Kuiper, Kuiper Belt, with 80 other asteroids, you might call them, and they're all beyond the distance of Pluto. So they travel very slowly. They're very far away. And Eris takes 11,000 years to go around the sun. There are other ones out there that take even slower. Now, Rick and I had a long, pleasant talk yesterday as to Why the hell is this planet hitting us now? There is no bad timing in astrology. Everything always hits at the right time, period. You can go in a corner and argue about it if you want to talk to the wall, but you're wasting your breath because everything is timely in God's world. Everything hits at the exact correct moment, even if the earth is going to be destroyed. And we can't say that's the best or not best. We don't know. We can't get our ego involved in what we want. We have to think constantly about what's best for the planet, what's best for the cosmos. And that's not a very popular theory amongst Americans. So anyhow, when 2005, 2006 came along, and Mr. Smith, I forget his name, in the western mountains of USA, up in with the big telescopes, he found Eris, and he found her to be. He also found her nature to be one of being a radical, being one of being hard-headed, a rebel. She's going to get what she wants. She's even more intense than Pluto, etc., etc. Well, not only did we find her at that time, and not only did she come upon the stage at the same time that the clown came on the stage. No coincidences. He is the clown. Clowns are us. Why? It's my opinion that for once in our life, America is being shown soberly that we need to take a real good, honest look at what the ugly American is. And I don't know about you, but I can't think of anybody more qualified. Okay. I'm not here to just pick on him. Now, when you look at the USA's chart, remember the USA's chart was founded in 1776 when it had Jupiter and Venus and it had Saturn and nothing else. Oh, beautiful chart, resourceful. Let's go to the way hills are green and rolling hills and rolling hayfields of the middle part of the country, and everything is just wonderful. And people got here and they went, wow, just go and take anything you want. And boy, did they find out they were wrong as time went by, and we added to the chart Uranus, and we added to the chart Neptune, and we added to the chart Pluto, and we added to the chart Chiron. All of a sudden, you got a whole different chart, which is who we really are. Because you cannot, everybody shake their head, do what I'm doing. You cannot fool the planets. You can't fool the planets. It's not possible because they are standard symbols of reality. Now, I don't know if this is going to just flick off the United States. We're going to melt with climate change, and we're going to be no more. I don't know if we're going to bounce back or not, but I do know there are a lot of naive people out there just saying to me, like they're at a fish pond, oh, can I get another nickel, get another try? They just don't take this seriously. They think that, oops, something has happened, and we got to get back to the way it was. We can't hold our breath much longer. Well, I remember talking to these people 7 years ago. I remember talking to other groups 10 years ago. And I remember talking an awful lot about how the USA is a sick country. And everybody agreed. Now, we have a lot of wonderful things too. I'm not just bashing the USA. I'm not just bashing the GOP. I'm going to also bash the Democrats too. But you got to take a look at while certainly in the last 7 years, we have become much more cognizant of what's wrong with the country. But what are we doing about it? Birds chirping. That's what I hear. We're doing tweet, 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 tweet. That's what we're doing. Going on the balcony and tweeting a little song. Tweet, 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 tweet. Now, I'm looking forward to the next tweet because Liza is very accurate and very powerful. And I'm kind of giving her the whole week, and I'll be there to assist her if she needs any. But she's got the hard job, which is to talk about what can we do about it. And I do think there's a lot of things that we can do. But the number one thing we have to do is admit that we're in a mess. That's the number one. Admit that we have made a mess of things. We're over here in West Virginia and in Pennsylvania, and we can't breathe, Jack. Coming down from Ontario. So anyhow, when I looked at 05, I'm going to show you on the map. This is very critical that you understand this. Okay, this is the, okay. Hold on. Let me see if I can get this. I want to get everybody muted. Mute. Okay. All right. Hi, Dr. John. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Rick.
Yes, sir. Now we're going to take a look at the USA's chart. And this is the USA's chart that's been highly corrected by Rudyard, some of the greatest astrologers ever. Keeping in mind that none of these charts are extremely accurate because nobody knows. Nobody thought to write down the time. Next time I start a country, I'm looking at what time it is. Okay? Next time you shoot the assassin, next time you shoot the governor, write down what time it is for me, okay? All right. Not only are we dealing with Pluto, this is the American chart. Not only are we dealing with Pluto having gone around, and it's back here. It's gone all the years that we've been a country, all the way around. I got so many bars in my way, I can barely move the screen. There's so many new windows that pop up on you. Okay, so in our lifetime, Pluto started here and it's come back around in February. It's right here, and it's in this general area right now. Okay, now, when you're going through a Pluto return, number one, it's a very rare event because most people don't live and withstand the Pluto transit for 256 years. Well, that's the number one thing that's going on in the country. And when you're going through a Pluto return, it does exactly what I told you earlier. It tests you to see is your mission statement real? Is it real? Have you been following or have you been trying to fake everybody out? Has one of your political parties really been trying to bullshit the other one? The other one's no saint. Okay, so you see what it can. But what you don't get during a Pluto return, you don't get a final report card that says you've really been screwing up. You've been abusing your power. Let me slip you several billion more dollars and go have 9 holes of golf and go try round number 2. Doesn't work that way. Think of yourself as a creator, and you are gods and you are creators. And like I told you in my initial images, this is like our parents left us alone in 1776. They gave us hundreds of billions of dollars, and they said, we'll be back in 256 years. You know what you're to do. You know how to treat people. You know the kind of things to build. You know the kind of things that you need to write. You know the way you need to behave with each other. So they come back 256 years later. What the hell do you think they found? Maury Povich dancing butt naked while you're dancing butt naked out in the rain while you're camping with these chicks on TV, huh? There's another good one. The whole point is this: the USA, compared to most charts, has an extremely playful chart. And there's nothing wrong with being Gemini. There's nothing wrong with being Cancer, but there's certainly something wrong when you're too imbalanced in that direction. And the USA is way too Geminian, is way too Cancerian, and there's nobody taking things seriously. So you look around and the natural response is, well, where's Gandhi? Well, where's somebody who's going to walk in and fix all this? They're not out there yet. They're coming. They're coming. So while the Pluto return is going on, it's going to go back and forth for another 2-3 years. The Pluto return is going to just grind and grind and grind and grind this country. What is it grinding about? It's grinding us into admitting what we are. No more BS the kids locked up in their little cages. No more BSing other countries, because other countries aren't going to put up with this. They don't believe us anymore. Who's doing the BSing? Who you think is doing the BSing? The people with the money. What they got to lose. So, at the same time, who in the hell would have configured this? I told you we discovered one new planet in the 1700s, Uranus. That was indicative that for 100 years, the American psyche, the Earth's psyche, could only handle one new energy, Uranus. And that was the photography and the equipment and New Age thinking and all that. And it was revolutionary and it was very favorable. And a lot of the cotton gin and all kind of medical instruments. And then the 1800s, we got Neptune. And Neptune, we got tremendous progress spiritually. We got new spiritual groups. We got people starting to discover their spirituality in different sense, like mediumship. And people started to really make progress in that area. Well, albeit a different, difficult era. 1900s, 20th century, 2 planets, Chiron, Pluto. We had our damn hands full with Pluto in 1930. It just about did us in. Chiron, we're finding out now, did a lot more to us than we think it did in 1977. And then in 2005, 80 new ones. 80 new ones. Well, can we kind of put 75 of them in the waiting room for a while we get their names, and we'll call them back sometime? And not all these new ones are placated. They're not all easy going. Some of these other ones with the weird names, they're really far out. They're very powerful. And some of them are really indicative of tremendous, powerful, spiritual, far out intellectual capacities. That's what we're dealing with now. So not only did we get that, we got Pluto and Eris at the same time. We got Pluto and Eris at the same time. 2005, 2006, 2007, 2018, 2014, the last 20 years. And it's now approaching again. And it's separated for a while, now they're going to get closer. Well, when you got Pluto, whose job is, and Mr. Rick and I talked about this yesterday, Pluto's job is to make sure that you're on track with your evolution. Eris's job is to make sure you're not screwing anybody, you're treating everybody fairly, and now's the time. We're not going to push anything under the rug, and we're going to get things up to date and fairly. Well, it sounds to me like these two planets have a lot in common. Pluto says, well, I'm thinking about this new volatile plan. What do you think? And Eris goes, well, hell yeah, it sounds good. And Eris says, I'm thinking of this double, triple plan. It's even more so. And Pluto goes, oh, boy, count me in on that one. That's what's going on now. And you can't go into winery land. You just can't go into winery land. I don't want this to be this way. You just don't have a voice. Put tape over your mouth. You're not doing anybody any good because it is the way it is. But why is it the way it is? Because this is what we have done or not have done. Okay. Now, it's going to be a hell of an education in the next 3 years as we get more used to Pluto and Eris, and they're going to start to separate. And we've had Saturn involved with Pluto also. But the main thing is what I showed you before. It's this, I don't want to do 1776. I want to come back to the current moments. Okay. Here's Pluto, 27. Here's Eris. Eris is about 24. How come she's not on this screen? Huh. Maybe because it's a, okay, it's because it's a 1776. Okay. So the point is, yeah, we weren't tracking Eris in 1776. But the point is now they're having it out with each other. And what do you think these two are doing? These two are saying, let's get this place together, or let's get rid of it. You have to consider that there's a greater mind than us, that's much bigger than what we're used to, that's interest is of the overall health of the universe, as opposed to little picayune Earth down there, that little tiny little pebble. So these two are going at it back and forth. Now, here's what happened, though. Here's what happened, especially 07, 08, 09, 12, 13, 14. What happened is Pluto and Eris started squaring exactly. Okay, they started squaring exactly. And that was a really tough period. And that's when we resurrected all those things that LBJ did with equal rights, with women's rights, with abortion rights, with all those things were brought up to look at them again, to see, grade report. How well did we do? And we saw in a lot of cases, we flunked badly. Well, you don't flunk abortion tests because you don't know something. You flunk abortion tests because you don't have it grokked out properly on how you really need to treat the people in your country. People with abortions and babies, etc. That's a tough issue, possibly the toughest issue there ever was. But it needs to be solved with great compassion and great understanding and a lot of thought, and none of this keep charging at each other and blaming each other. So now, as 05 hit and 06 hit and 07 hit, and everybody was all blown away because here comes Pluto in 08. Here comes Pluto in 08. Everybody got so fooled, including me. 08, 09. Oh, Pluto's in Capricorn. Oh, Pluto's in Capricorn. But what we didn't notice was Eris was on the scene. And she was square to Pluto. Dum. Thought I'd just sneak in here. And this is where everybody across the planet started to pick up subconscious vibrations of following suit with what Eris wants. Eris wants fairness. She doesn't want to jerk around anymore. She will knock you out if you get in her way. She wants the job done. She's tired of waiting. She wants it done. She wants people treated fairly, etc., etc., etc. So what happened is, what kind of perfect wave do you think the idiot rode on to get here? He rode on the perfect wave. He couldn't get anybody's attention with a megaphone in 2000. 2005, 2007, he started getting the perfect wave. The perfect wave, yes, because one of the bases of Eris is, I'm not being treated fairly, so let's fix it. And boy, if you ain't got Trump's middle name right there, I don't know what it is. I'm not being treated fairly. And boy, you know yourself, how do you deal with a client that insists upon being a victim? How do you do it? So the trick is to see that Trump went ahead and benefited a lot by putting all his marbles on top of the negative side of Eris, and that a lot of us are really getting to understand and use the positive side of Eris and trying to rebuild properly. And those two things are at it. And those two are at each other's throat. What do you mean it woke? What do you mean woke? I'm awake since I woke up. Stupid ass woke. Woke. They say the stupidest things. I'm awoke because it's better for you. Oh, you won't, don't worry about me. I'll be all right. So we got all that stuff. So the number one thing that happened is that Eris slipped in on us when we weren't ready for it, and it inserted itself in us, but it inserted itself in a crooked fashion. It didn't get mounted properly. It didn't get assimilated properly. And a lot of people got confused. And I was confused for 5 years. And I kept writing all these articles about Pluto. And I kept telling people, I'm not writing anymore. I'm just sick of writing about Pluto. And then a guy came up to me and didn't even know astrology, hardly at all. He says, it's not Pluto, it's Eris. Knock me on my butt. He was right. It was Eris. Because Eris and Pluto are similar, but yet they're quite different. And when I was getting confused, I was giving attributes to the energies, calling them Plutonian when they were in fact Erisian. See, the trouble with Eris is Eris doesn't care what means it has to take to get to the goal. It doesn't care. It's vicious. Doesn't care. Pluto does care. Pluto is much more humane, much more balanced. And you see this common theme amongst the Trump followers where it's okay for me to break into the Capitol and smash those windows and sit in her chair. And I didn't really break the window. The window's still there. Can't you see it? So that's the number one thing that we got to do, is to get astrologers to start following Eris, which is just starting to happen. Number two, starting to differentiate the difference between what Pluto is and what Eris is. And I think we'll do well with that. And once we can get a handle, each of us, once we get a handle on this is my punching Pluto fist, and this is my punching Eris fist, we're going to be hell on wheels. We're going to be hell on wheels. Because the 1-2 punch from these two planets is, I'm not putting up with it anymore. I'm not going to do it. And one of the things that has to go away, and this is where the Democrats are so weak. One of the things that has to go away during this process, read my lips now, Mr. Bush, we got to stop being nice about it. You see the GOP being nice about it? Do you see them being nice about locking these kids in these cages, putting them in boats and shoving them back across the Mediterranean till they die? Do you see them being nice? It's not the answer. The Democrats are the answer at the moment because they're saner. They still got plenty of problems. But they've got this self-defeating mechanism all throughout the Democrats' chart. They're just on their own butt all the time. They're restricting themselves, but it's got to be done like this, got to be done the right way, I guess. And Harris and the GOP and Pluto are just laughing at us. How do you think Pluto gained so much power since 1930? How? Because they had Ronnie Reagan, a cowboy, up there with the cowboy smile, and Daddy's going to take care of you. And you know the cowboy's here, and he's going to give you a little drink, and he's going to give you a hat, pull over for some tea. Here's your rope, here's your cattle, everything's going to be fine. It's America once again. It's all bullshit. Because what do you think Reagan married a cancer woman? Oh, cancer woman. He's the Aquarian. He married her because he knew he could bullshit her. All you got to do with a cancer personality is make them feel safe and secure within their own circle. Then they're fine. Don't care what else you do. I'm safe. I'm fine. And we have found out since then that that's no longer true. So not only do we have to start activating Pluto, activating Eris, separating the two in our mind, we need to start standing up to people that are speaking idiotically about both of them. And we need to show people that Eris is here to stay, that it has a wonderful good side, and that we need to support it. And we need to show people how Eris is coming out of the cops. It is coming out of the Black community. It is coming out of dancers. It is coming about Walmart workers. People have had enough. People had it. And when you had it, that's Eris. So that's the number one place this story starts. The number two place the story starts is the rich lying to us about the trickle down economy. You know, the money's going to trickle down. They're going to have so much it's going to pour into our pockets. And that, it's not going to happen. So we have wonderful people. We have a lot of dire challenges in our chart. We want to just go play. We want to just go play and watch Dancing with the Stars. That's what our chart says. And we don't have the time or privilege to do so. So I want to open the discussion up now to you because those are the real basic problems that we need to discuss to pave the way for next week. And Liza Jane, who's going to be talking about how best can we solve it. And tonight, when I'm done, I'm going to click on the stop recording button. Then I'm going to click on the end of meeting, which I I don't know why they do it that way, but that's how it works, and that's sad to say that why we lost Claudia and Rick's fine episode last week. Okay, Dr. John, it's so good to see you. Of course, we got two Dr. Johns now. Only one of them's a real doctor. You a PhD too, John? Yeah, they're both.
Thank
Okay.
you, Peter, John.
Type of JD.
Okay, you got a JD. Let's talk to Mr. John the Educator.
Which John?
No, it's not stored in Zoom hosting. I've already looked. Thank you. John, what's on your mind? You've been away for a while. You've been out in the world of meetings. And what have you found out there in terms of sensing what Eris is doing?
I think all the stuff with climate change is unavoidable. I mean, I'm looking outside at the air quality here in the skies in Columbus, and this feels very much like Pluto and Aquarius, even though it's retrograded into Capricorn now. We're having, just like when Saturn was in Aquarius and we had COVID, here again, we're facing air issues. And I don't think it's just, and I think it's the Pluto era square that we're dealing with right now. So I don't think it's Pluto, but I think the chaos is, we're trying to avoid it. The establishment is trying to push it down, ignore it. And I think it's just going to go deeper and deeper. You know, Rick, you and I talked about this, and Claudia, I know you were in on this too. We said that these things were going to get more and more in our face to the point where we're not going to be able to ignore them anymore. And here we are.
Here we are.
Air is bad everywhere. It's not just here in Columbus. It's in Pittsburgh. It's in Chicago. It's in Toronto.
Well, I can tell you one thing from my position of the head of this program. 7 years, Exquisite Zodiac, not the Exquisite Zodiac, but Astrology Unplugged. Took me a while to make my shift, but I got it made now. I'm going to do two things. I hope you guys do one thing, three things, five things. I don't care. I'm sure whatever you do is going to be fine. One is I ain't stopping. I'm going to be hell on wheels, and I'm going to be loud. I'm not going to make people mad. I'm just going to be talking about, no, I'm not going to talk your bullshit anymore. We're not talking about your bullshit religion anymore. We're going to talk about what's real, and we're going to shift to God, and we're going to shift to, in our own way, whatever is best for us, we're going to shift to giving our life to God. I don't know what those words mean to you. They're very difficult phrases, but I'm going to push all of us to give our lives to God, to give our lives to Spirit, to give our lives to that force up there that can help us, sustain us, and guide us. So that's all I know I'm going to do. And I think most of you will be doing something similar. But what has happened to John? What has happened to John S. here since you've been away and you've been back in the educational field? What's that felt like?
I think we're still dealing with the after effects of COVID, honestly, Rick and everyone. We never made a full comeback to where we were before. People are exhausted. I think educators are exhausted. Parents are at their wits' end. I feel like everybody is just overwhelmed. And there's been this big push to go back to normal, as things were in 2020 before everything began.
Ain't gonna happen.
Trying to go back.
Ain't gonna happen.
We're pretending at this point. We're trying.
Yeah, we're bullshitting ourselves.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. So there's been that, and we've been dealing with that, you know, rather than accepting fully that we're in a different place. I think we have been. I think these things are happening to us, as we all know, to get our, you know, to raise our awareness. The air, climate change, COVID, all these things are like nature's wake-up calls. Like, stop trying to put your head down, ignore it all. And it's just going to get bigger and bigger and louder until we can't ignore it anymore.
Well, are you guys starting to see grassroots campaigns that are similar to what we're talking about?
I think it's still subtle. Like, you know, how we had Black Lives Matter and the Occupy movement and all. I think there's stuff brewing, but it's still underground at this point. It feels like things came out in the open for a while, then they kind of
Yeah,
sputter.
it's a big project, big. Rick, you have your hand raised. Go ahead. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, John.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what John said. Dr. John, I really appreciate where you're coming from. And when we looked at the US chart that they knew in that time period, Saturn, Lord of Karma, was in Libra, making us think about justice and
Yeah, yes.
fairness, doing things the right way. And there's also the element that we see now where Chiron was in Aries. Well, our identity, we didn't want to believe we were just like imperialist Great Britain, but we continued to be just like the other colonizers,
Just like a Spaniard,
knocking down one
the
tribe
Dutch.
after another.
Yes.
And we built our financial strength through the cotton gin and the free labor of the slave workforce. That's what made us the world
There's the
power.
chart for you right there.
And is it not, I find it very interesting that Dr. John mentioned 2020. That's when Chiron was making another return in Aries, square to Pluto, and we had all kinds of riots. We were watching people try to heal their identities, saying this isn't working for us. It happened 51 years ago in the late 60s, and it's been a theme. It's about healing that identity, and we have to get straight. What is justice?
I agree with you. And another thing I'm seeing, and I'm hoping you see this too, I'm seeing a lot of people get wise to relationships. I'm seeing a lot of people say, I don't really want a relationship because I don't want what I thought I wanted, because that's just too hard. And that just ended up in divorce. And let me think about this for a while. And I want to think 2 times, 3 times before I think about any more children, too. And I think these are all very good signs.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? The pronouns, the identity, the gender, it's all identity. That's what we're seeking to heal. And that's what you're talking about. We can't get married and say, knowing myself as I do, I know this person, but we don't know ourselves. Not until we heal to a certain place. So that's why the marriages are falling. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think that's a very good point. Why is there no heiress back at that time?
I saw it in Capricorn when you had the chart in earlier.
There
8
it is.
degrees.
Okay, very good. Okay, very good stuff, Rick. Other people's opinions about what we're talking about. This is very important that we hear from each of you, because you guys are all very bright and you have very good perspectives. Deborah, Joan.
Having a revelation here. I'm John K.
Oh,
I'm very educated and I've studied history and I've wondered what's the logic of history. And I'm realizing right now the logic of history is astrology. We live on this tiny little planet and we think that the universe is just something out there that we have no relation to. We have an intimate relationship with the universe. We totally ignore it and think it's logic, whatever type of mental apparatus we want to think of in understanding what's going on in the world, it's astrological. Clear and simple.
Exactly right.
And I'm just seeing that right now, like some kind of blazing sun of some kind. It's just
Well,
hitting.
John, not only do I think you're absolutely correct, but I watch TV with my girl every night. I watch a lot of crime shows, and there are so many shows I watch where I see this young gentleman or this young lady that gets in really bad trouble, and I scream out loud, astrology chart, like they can hear me. And I can just see if that person at that time would get a proper reading and understand what they were going through, how it can just help them so much. I end up crying my eyes out because I can't reach to the screen to get to them. And it's so painful to watch.
I have to think of what astrology is doing with the legal system. And I've never thought of
Oh,
that.
Jesus, God, John.
Never thought of that before. This is amazing.
My God.
I think Pluto is making us look at our Supreme Court.
Eris is all about fairness and justice.
Yeah, that conservative imbalance, not very fair, not representative of the country at all. The Supreme Court is going way, way too far off the deep end.
People,
My whole thing is, I really don't have an answer, but I just don't understand trying to be optimistic. I just don't understand how we can fix so much broken stuff at one time. I just don't see how we can do it.
I'm curious too, Rick. I mean, we're coming out of the Pluto return now. We have a Uranus return coming up. It's third one in the United States history in 2028. So we're on the verge of something. With Uranus, we can't tell what it is, but it's going to be something.
Oh no, Uranus is totally unpredictable. Well, look what it's doing to the GOP. They're going through a Uranus return now on top of their Neptune. Go ahead, Deborah.
You're muted.
You're muted.
You are muted. How dare somebody mute her?
What I would offer is a quote that comes from Antonio Grasmi, who was an Italian philosopher. And he said, oh, I wish I could remember it now. Hold on a second. I pulled it up. Just how it begins. Something about the new world is struggling to be born, and now is the time of monsters. And I think, going back to the identity issue, we have too many identities in ourselves and in the world. And until we have a monster, a real monster to fight, to organize around, I think it all has to come crashing down. The monsters are rearing their ugly heads, and it's going to take a lot of rebuilding. Does that make sense?
I got somebody I'd like to nominate for monster.
Well, there's lots of monsters, and they all have very strong identities. When you look at the
seemingly.
Well, okay, I'll stop.
No, I think you're right, Deborah. I mean, there are monsters. I mean, Trump clearly is a monster. And then all of his followers. Although I tend to think of him more of him and Bannon and those guys, and Giuliani is more like Hanna-Barbera kind of monsters, but still, they are monsters.
Yeah.
But also, even just the fact that maybe there are monsters, but the fact that we've let ourselves all come to this point is a monster in itself. Like it's unbelievable. Every generation has their issues, right? And their challenges. We know that, but I don't think we've seen anything like this. The pressure is it's got to get absolutely really, really, really bad.
And I think that's why we need to turn to God.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a panacea. I just think that he's the one or she's the one that could work in the area of miracles. And I think that he or she just needs to see that we're willing. I think
Mhm.
his or her energies are lined up very much with Pluto and Eris. And I think he just needs to see that we're volunteering and we will take his or her guidance. And I think that's
Yeah.
going to do wonders for us.
And I think more and more people, I'm not just being optimistic, I do feel like more and more people are really turning to their center and their God, not religion necessarily. There's plenty out there that are still believing that, if you don't believe this and blah 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 and religion and blah blah. But I think more and more people, because you have to get broken down, and a lot of people are just broken down. I was talking to somebody this week, with my daughter, and this person has a very strong Pluto transit right now. This person is not getting it. They're not getting the Pluto message. I see that happening. I didn't say anything to this person, but I'm like, well, they're not getting it yet. They haven't been broken down yet. And the support system is breaking down. And just like how we're doing it in the world, all our support system is crumbling,
Yeah.
until we rely on the right support system within ourselves and our guidance spiritually. But I also am baffled that I only know maybe 2 or 3 astrologers that talk about Eris and how important this era is. It's interesting to me, like why is that?
Because she came in a group, and astrologers are not going to digest 80 new planetoids at the same time, because she's so far out. I think also people got scared to death when they started to find out about her super violent nature.
Yeah, I agree with Claudia, Rick. You are one of the few astrologers I've read. I've been looking. I think, and you and me and Melody, Claudia, we had a discussion on this at one point, I think.
They're coming.
Yeah.
Coming.
But most people are avoiding it. It's like, oh, this is scary. Let's pretend that this doesn't exist, rather than diving in and being curious. Like, what is this?
I'm not scared. He's the one we need right now.
I think maybe because of Pluto too. In the 1930s, people saw Pluto and they were like, "Oh shit!" They're looking back. Here's Hitler. Here's the rise of the
Now
Nazis.
tell me something. Did you not agree with me when you saw the birth 7 years ago of the Me Too movement?
Yeah.
Wasn't that kind of thrilling? And it had a check mark next to it. That was Arisian.
Yes.
It
Oh,
was
very much
Arisian.
so.
And everybody had a sign saying, "I don't care what your sign says. Mine says Me Too."
Very much so.
I thought that brought us a lot of hope.
And I think they're
Arab Spring too.
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's what Era symbolizes. I think
Deborah, we have too many fingers and too many pies. I swear to God, I don't want to eat any of it, just fingers and pies.
I think another problem with more people getting on board with Eris is that it is a figure from deeper within the antiquity, less understood in the broader sense of the pantheon.
Yes.
That makes it harder to understand. You have to really get into the mythology, and people just don't think about that.
Let me ask you a little pretty minor little question. Okay? If you took your big eraser right now and you erased everything beyond Pluto, all the Eris, all the air stuff, if you erased all that, what would you be left with?
What?
What would you be left with if you erased all the planets, you had a magic wand, and none of those planets matter anymore?
Pluto.
I mean, what beyond Pluto? What would you be left with?
Our inner solar system.
These Arisian planets, etc., are necessary. They're necessary for being here right now.
An incomplete picture.
What'd
Right.
you say, honey?
An incomplete picture.
That's okay for now. Yeah. But we need these super powerful forces that move slowly because I don't know about you guys, but we've beaten to death the old zodiac. We've beaten it to death for a long time. You heard that little bird chirping. And bird said, "Yeah, give me some air, give me some air."
Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone down.
That's okay. What do you think, John?
Which one?
Dr. John in the white shirt.
Yeah. Oh, JD, Juris Doctorate, John.
Well, I'm not sure. I think what you said is turning to God. The people who belong to religions, they see that as meaning something that they're very familiar with it. They do that on Sunday. We need something bigger than that, where there's really no separation between us and God. I like the Course in Miracles discusses. And all the planets together, and the ones we don't know about, if you add them all together, what you come up with is God. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's correct.
They're all aspects of God.
Mhm.
I think you're right. I think that we have a great group here that's very similar to a lot of other groups that we could start and maybe will be starting. I think it's full of people full of love and respect for each other. And, I don't want to miss a Thursday because I just think we're too intervaluable. Let's say Dr. John from Columbus. What do you say in Columbus?
Yeah, I think what resonates with me, Rick, is you talking about the whole zodiac and all these planets have come up. Like, just people underrate Chiron, and yet look at all the things that emerged around 1977, 1978, the year I was born.
Yeah.
Alternative healing therapies. I mean,
When I
everything.
started astrology.
Yeah, so it's like all of a sudden, I think Chiron brought with it this awareness of, alternative methods of healing, and that, there's other ways beyond the traditional medical system. So I think every one of these planets, like, we haven't even scratched the surface of these, just like we were talking about with Eris. I think, as you were saying earlier, we can only handle one planet every 100 years. Now we've got a bunch of them. What's the symbolism of that? And what are we avoiding by
It's
not
astounding.
trying to understand these? Yeah, like, what about Orcus? What about all these other asteroids that we're discovering now? What does each of those represent? Because it clearly represents something coming into the collective consciousness here. What are we?
There's no doubt about it. You're right.
Yeah, what are the opportunities that each of these represents? And why are they coming up now with these challenges out in the world? Clearly, there's some greater awareness that we're being invited into creating.
That's true.
Here.
Chiron taught astrology and divination. So it's interesting that that would be connected with the alternative medicine. And we recognized with Uranus that it awakened the consciousness because those on the planet became aware of it. Now consciousness is being awakened with all these discoveries. My thoughts to poke at something to get to your question is that we need to see which of these planets are really personally strong in different people's charts. That's where individuals are going to be helping to heal the collective. Because some people are going to be strong with one thing, some another.
That's beautiful, Rick. I agree. I agree.
I agree too. Tomorrow I got a reading with a young lady from Kuwait. And I've come up with a theory recently, like a vision of when planets come over you, it's like shoots of plants that come up through you. They're just planetary shoots. And when they come up, you cannot control them. You cannot direct them. You can try to suppress them. You can try to put water on them, but they're coming up, buddy. They're coming up and they're going to make you some kind of beautiful plant, whatever you're going to be. And that's how I'm doing my readings now. I got the person, I hear her words, I hear she says this, she's this kind of therapy, she's in this kind of country, speaking this language, but I'm not hearing any of that. I'm hearing, here comes this shoot. What are you going to do with it? Because it's your shoot. You brought it to you. I'll share with you, but let's talk about what it means. And I think that shoot that you're talking about is very indicative of the overall shoot coming through the collective. Well, we're tearing it up tonight, buddy. Hey, boy. Don't be a,
We
huh?
we can be our own medicine if we get right with ourselves.
Okay, Deborah, you put 2 parts of Rick on your forehead and 3 parts of Claudia over there on your arm, and deep breath and turn in circles, and we'll all be fine. Don't miss next week. I'm very tired. I'm going to go. Don't miss next week. It's going to be Liza Jane. She's already got this many notes made. And I'm going to sit next to her. She's getting better and better all the time. She's going to be talking about what can be done. And I'm waiting to hear back from Charles Eisenstein because I've invited him to speak to our group. We were in a group with him once in Pittsburgh, and the nicest guy in the world. I'm hoping we get to avail of his services. But I think everybody did really good tonight. It's a very tough subject.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, everybody, for not throwing things at each other.
You,
John, good to see you again.
John, Rick. Thank you.
I will, I'm going to turn off the recording, then I'm going to shut off the session. Okay?
Please do see that you do.